Time for talking points. Then we're going to pick up with what Paul Scully had to say with his view on affordability checks. Dave, what did you take from that speech?
I think that the most notable thing about Paul Scully's words were that over the last few weeks and months, and particularly in the last week, we've had various racing luminaries quoted in the trade paper. You know, John Gosden, as you said there, Stuart Williams was quoted, all with essentially saying very similar things, that affordability checks, not only are they essentially not fair, but they're also going to inflict huge damage on racing. The difference with this is that we've actually got someone from the government who's saying this is not what we want. He questioned the phrase affordability checks, but the money shot quote for me was, I'm reading it out, "It is not the role of the government, it is not the role of the Gambling Commission to tell people how much of their salary they are allowed to spend on gambling." So, you know, essentially, people in racing, well, we would say that, wouldn't we? That, of course, we don't believe that affordability checks are justified. We think that they are intrusive. You don't have to take bank statements to purchase things in other areas of your life. Why should you have to do it when you bet? But the important thing is this time it's come from the government, and that is, I think, the telling development this week, that someone from government is saying to the Gambling Commission, this isn't the right way to go.
And for horse racing in particular, there have been a few figures put on just what it's going to, or potentially could cost the industry. But do we need to start doing something now to fasten up against what might be coming, or it is now in some ways too late already?
I don't think it's ever really too late. I think the racing and the betting industries have. If this doesn't go our way, I don't think that many people would turn around and say, well, we didn't do enough. Some people might say we've actually done too much, in that perhaps that strength and volume of campaigning could have an adverse effect. But as I say, I don't think that at the end of it we'd say not enough was done.
The Clarence House Chase saw a horse win it that was supplemented yesterday in the form of Editeur Du Gite. One of the talking points we had last week, Noel, was whether or not it was right that it was only reopened to horses that were originally entered, given it was a different race track, and a week later as well. What's your view? Should a race only be reopened to the horses that were originally entered, or should it just be a free-for-all, given it's a slightly different nature of a race?
I think for a Grade 1 like that, when it's a different track, a week later, I think it's only right to open it again and let some other people come into it. If they had 3 runners last week, and it was a good job, they gave the other horse the chance to come back into the race. It would have been a pretty of a non-event turning up yesterday to watch a 3-runner race. I think it was the right thing to do, yeah.
And for the horses that could be supplemented, they were supplemented at a reduced fee as well.
Yeah, I think that there are 2 ways of looking at this. You can say, well, the race was declared for Ascot. Those were the horses that stayed in. Those are the horses that, as of right, should be able to contest that race, almost to reward them for, I don't mean loyalty, but you know what I mean. They were there at the start. They should be allowed to contest the race without any Johnny-come-latelys coming in. The opposite view of that is, what are we trying to do with British racing? Are we trying to put competitive, compelling races on, especially at the top level, or are we not? And if we are, then there has to be, I think, those who were there originally probably have to be prepared to take a little bit of a hit for the overall good of the sport. We knew that going into Ascot last week that 3 runners was, although 2 of them were Cheltenham Festival winners from last season, that it was a disappointing turnout. And I think that in future I would change the rule. If you go to a different track, say, right, I'm sorry, we're scrapping that, and go from there. There is one, if you want to really think outside the box, there is a way whereby you could change the prize money, whereby those who were originally in get more if they win, and those who the Johnny Come Latelys come in and they get less if they win. I know that sounds a bit of an overreaction perhaps to that situation, but it's a possibility.
Owner expenses for going to Fontwell. Keen to get Noel's view on this, but what exactly has been done here, Dave?
Yeah, just that Fontwell announced this week an ARC track that they were acting on off their own bat to combat the field sizes in chases, which were disappointing last season. They averaged 5 runners per chase in 2022. So they are putting up a £300 expenses to trainers who are outside a 120-mile radius of Fontwell to say, if you want to come, we'll give you £300 towards your travelling expenses.
Incentive?
I think it is an incentive, and well done, Fontwell, for coming up with the idea. For people who are travelling a lot, I think it will attract more people to come, and their chase fields have been a bit smaller, so I think it's a good idea for them, and fair play to them for thinking of it.
Would it, with your syndicates, for example, would it put you guys off, or the 10 off, depending on how far they have to travel, or is it a decision that you guys make, you and Dave make, or the trainer makes, and they just have to live with it?
Well, I think we try to go where we think the right race is for the horse, and wherever that may be. But if someone's willing to give you a few quid to cover the costs, it makes it even better.
You're going to take it, whether or not that would be an incentive to go there over elsewhere, though. Not necessarily.
Yeah, we tend to go where the race suits best, but like I said, it's definitely an incentive.
Expenses are always welcome, aren't they, Dave?
They are, but I think important. That it's. We know that the difficulty with field sizes. We know that the solutions to that problem are more wide-ranging, and that the fixture list is going to have to change, I think. But in the short term, I think this is a really good incentive from Fontwell. It goes up until the track's midsummer break in June, but I think it's a welcome initiative.
Cheltenham, £7.50 a pint. £7.50 for a pint of Guinness, but the key point here is it's £6. It was £6 for the snooker, which you were at.
Yeah, I went to the second semi-final, which was Judd Trump versus Sean Murphy, which Trump won 6-2, but Murphy threw in a 140 break, so that was always nice to see.
Did you have a Guinness?
I didn't actually. No, I was driving, but I went to the bar and to buy a sparkling water, and when I saw that the Guinness was £6 a pint, I very nearly just weighed in just for my friends and family at those rock bottom prices.
Yeah.
The problem is this is a good story. This is a good story. £7.50 at Cheltenham, £6 at a snooker event. But I'm going to get pelters for saying this, and I'm not on the Jockey Club payroll. But we're not comparing like with like. The bar in the Centaur on the Saturday night when we went was just a straight bar where people. It wasn't. They weren't bussing people in from all over. It wasn't done on the same scale as it was at the Cheltenham Festival. So we're really not comparing like with like. You can argue about the discrepancy. £1.50. You know, it's a 25% increase on £6. But just to say, oh well, it was £6 at the snooker. It's a good story, this, because it gets lots of people interested and it provokes a lot of debate. But for my experience of being at the Centaur, it was you had just a handful of people serving behind the bar, not bussing in loads of agency staff, which the Jockey Club would pay for.
Yeah, on the face of it, it doesn't look good, does it? But I think when you dig a little bit deeper, there might just be valid enough reasons.
Yeah, I really think there are, and you know, one could go back also to, you know. Go to Wembley Stadium, go to the O2, and you'll be paying West End prices and more there. But there we go. Let's leave that one for another day.
Pint of Heineken in the Parade Ring Bar at Maidan, £15.40. Yeah.
Was it really? Right.
Whew. Yeah.
You didn't have a second one?
No, didn't even have one. GBR results. So, this was announced in their newsletter this week. There were some positive stories. There was one fundamentally negative story which people focused on. This was as a result of the money spent on the Everyone's Turf campaign, and the targets were to get racecourse attendances up.
Yeah.
That wasn't achieved.
No.
What do you think?
1.6 million spent on the campaign. Everyone's Turf was a marketing campaign that was launched in June of last year, and the aim was to get the figures for Q3, which is like July, August and September, up to the 1.95 million through the turnstiles from pre-COVID 2019. It didn't get there. It got to 1.62, which is about 83%. Now, Great British Racing acknowledged that, it hadn't reached its target, pointed to the cost of living crisis, which I certainly don't think is an invalid consideration. I think our own government does it a fair bit when they talk about the economic performance of the country, and they point to COVID rather than Brexit. And I think that the cost of living crisis is there. It was a decent way out in explaining those figures. There were some bits of good news. 10 million people in 2019 said they would be prepared, they were thinking about going racing. That's gone up to 12.9 million. One thing that Ireland do really well, I think, is they have really good campaigns for students. And just one thing I would say, I don't know whether Jermaine Jenas likes horse racing or not, but I love watching or engaging with famous people who love horse racing. Emma Banks loves horse racing. Who's the doctor with the big... Martin Clunes, right? He did a programme about horses and about horse racing.
He's heavily involved with Greatwood, I think, isn't it? Or one charity.
And there's nothing phony or ersatz about those people saying, I love horse racing and I love horses. And I think when you look further outside to celebrity and you're paying people, as I don't know what Jermaine Jenas' views are about racing, but I think if you get someone who is really into it, like the people that I've just mentioned, that has a very genuine and believable ring about it. Sorry to go on. I'm not.
That's fine. One thing I would say is the experience of being at Cheltenham yesterday was whatever attendances were in Q3. As a day on its own, you walk in and out of Cheltenham thinking racing's in a pretty good place. But that's one day on its own. Vaccination rules, Noel. This off the back of Noble Yeats not being allowed to run in the Fleur de Lis because his vaccinations, for all they were administered correctly and up to date, they weren't on the records up to date. There's been a change brought in whereby you effectively have up until 9 a.m. the day after entries closed, having been notified if your vaccination status isn't correct by the BHA via email to amend that. So it's effectively given trainers an extra 24 hours to make sure everything's all right, and you will be notified via email, so we avoid this. But that's got to be a sensible thing, hasn't it? It's got to be a good thing.
I think all the trainers in the UK were well notified all winter that this was happening in January. Paul Nicholas has probably done it for years in January, and they've all had to do it now. I think it's probably a fairly level playing field. Everyone's doing it in January now, and I think they've been fairly well notified.
It is. You're right. It's suddenly January. This is for the flu vaccinations, I know, but it was the sort of. I know other people did it, but it was always known really as the time Paul Nicholas did it, but everyone seems to do it now. The NTF have been very positive, and Paul Johnson's come out and been very positive about discussions with the BHA, saying they've listened and effectively this should be all but avoided going forward. Yeah,
I think it's a good thing. As Noel said, trainers were well notified about how this procedure was going to work. The truth of it is that although they had lots of prior knowledge, it was an imperfect procedure. I think that's fair. What Robert Whaley-Cohen, the owner of Noble Yeats, said about it's a bit like booking a flight and then turning up at the plane and they're saying, like, sorry, your paperwork, we can't let you on the plane. I thought that was a fair way of illustrating it. Full marks to the BHA. They have listened to the concerns of the trainers, and I think that this is it was in the end, of course, the Fleur de Lis chase didn't take place because it was frosted off, but at least in the future this sort of difficulty, whereby a nascent race would have had a real star name attached to it, a Gold Cup third favourite, a Grand National winner of last year. That situation won't arise in the future, we hope.
The Goffs Thyestes Chase on Thursday had 18 runners. Only 6 of them didn't come from Gordon Elliott or Willie Mullins' yard. 9 from Elliott, 3 from Willie Mullins. It was won by Willie Mullins. The best finisher from away from those yards finished in 5th. It was Barry Connell's horse. What do you think about that? Is that not good for the health of Irish racing?
It probably doesn't look great for Irish racing, but then you can't really fault the 2 trainers involved, Willie Mullins and Gordon Elliott. They're very, very powerful yards. They've been buying the best horses. They've got the best owners, and they have a lot of horses that are, good enough and eligible to run that race. So I'm not sure, apart from restricting how many horses a trainer can run in a race, how else you can do it. But then, if you're the owner that has a horse good enough to run, trained by them, and the trainer's only allowed to run so many, your horse has to lose out. It's probably not ideal from an owner's point of view, but it's a tricky one. But it's certainly not the 2 trainers' fault anyway.
If the right horses are showing up for the race, do you care where they come from, Dave?
Yes, I do personally. I don't like the look of it. Not from an integrity point of view. I just think from the point of view of sport is better for broader competition. But the problem with this, and I've spoken before about however many runners Aidan O'Brien has in the Derby, it's not a satisfactory situation. This week we had a turkey voting for Christmas in that Patrick Mullins said, "I don't see that as satisfactory." Well, that was something of a surprise coming from the son of Willie Mullins. But I think that at all costs we have to. It doesn't look great. I don't like it, but at all costs we have to go against the idea of restriction. You can't have a horse that didn't win the Derby because Aidan O'Brien was limited to 4, and that wasn't in the thing. Horses like Wings of Eagles win that race, and the same goes for the marquee races over jumps too. As Noel said, if you're an owner and you've got the horse who's 6 on the list, who if he were anywhere else would be able to run in that race, and someone tells you
yes, the owner that will suffer.
That's just an impossible situation. It's a real negative, this, but the alternative, in my view, is much, much worse.
7 talking points done and dusted. Right, we can say goodbye to Noel. All right.
Thank you very much for having me.
It was genuinely a pleasure you coming in. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And good luck going forward. Any horse we haven't seen so far this year that you're excited about?
We've got a nice bumper horse with Fergal O'Brien called Camzanas, who was unlucky first time, got brought down the bumper. So I'm looking forward to getting him out to see what he can do.
Okay, good stuff. Hope one of the pointers wins today.
Hope so. Hope he gets around safe.
Yeah. Good luck. Noel, thanks ever so much.
Lovely. Thank you.
Still plenty more to come as though we say goodbye to Noel. We'll be hearing a lot more from Dave very soon.
Subscribe to Racing TV's YouTube channel now to watch more great races like this.